Threat or major break? Carlos Sainz has just sent out a message to Albon. It's make it or break it for both at Williams, especially now that the team has brought in big sponsors and have two veteran drivers. But what does Sainz's Williams arrival mean for Albon's and Williams's Formula One future? Could we see an intra-team fight like never before? Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon have been making their debuts as new Williams teammates in private team testing. And, while they appear to be getting along well, as one would expect from two mature and pleasant drivers, how they compare in Formula One 2025 poses a risk to both of their hard-earned reputation. Especially as it has been rumoured that Sainz has been the faster one of the two. In an interesting way, partnering Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz is a gift from Williams team principal James Vowles to the designers of his team's 2025 Formula One chassis. Both are appendix-free these days, resulting in a roughly 9-gram savings per car that no other team can achieve. Handy, given that the car weight issue was what truly held Williams behind last year. However, at the same time, it is thought that the engineers have been able to shave off a further 15 kilo of the car, resulting in a gain of about 0.3 seconds per lap. The team now possesses something more subjective, but potentially more rewarding. Arguably, F1's most polite driver lineup. Two humble and affable personalities with emotional intelligence to match their enormous athletic abilities. But for how long? So Sainz has joined Albon at Williams to form Carbono, according to social media material from the team's recent testing of previous cars, TPC, run with 2023's FW45 in Barcelona last week. Some will undoubtedly dismiss that silly mashup. There's undoubtedly a growing narrative about how the current pack's friendliness contrasts with the needle adored by drivers of previous generations, and still witnessed in less frequent moments these days, as with George Russell and Max Verstappen. But, no matter how successfully these two work together at Williams, this is where it all begins. Sainz returns after an emotional fourth and possibly final season racing for Ferrari. He harnessed the grief of losing his spot in the Scuderia to Lewis Hamilton into a streak of spectacular performances at the start of 2024. This included his spectacular Melbourne win over 2 weeks after undergoing surgery in Jeddah. Former teammate Charles Leclerc has reacted with his best season-long F1 performance yet. But Sainz was so close, once again, that the two were constantly attempting to occupy the same section of track. Sainz gave Leclerc no quarter all year. The two even came to minor blows on his home turf in Spain. There was also a lot of team radio talk about their Las Vegas rivalries, which Leclerc found both funny and wince-inducing, as well as those eye-catching sprint bouts in China and Austin. So, could we see this happening at Williams as well? Or do Sainz's 2024 performances tell us he'll be light years ahead of Albon? If they do meet on track, however, Vowles said last year that that's normal. One driver will always be frustrated by what it is. If we're fighting for a win or a podium, so be it, he said of Sainz potentially battling Albon one day. Obviously, imaginative thinking for Williams in 2025. However, considering Sainz's outstanding performances for Ferrari, which encouraged Leclerc, the moment has come to consider what they will mean for Albon's F1 reputation moving forward. Could he be the one to show us all that perhaps Albon's performances aren't that impressive after all? Albon's reputation has been greatly recovered after enduring the ruthless pace of Red Bull promotion-demotion in 2019 and 2020, completing the entire length of the energy drink company's brutal F1 driver conveyor belt in just 2 seasons. In Williams, he discovered the ideal environment for recovery and eventual growth. The club needed a talismanic replacement for Russell beginning in 2022, and Albon delivered, combining frequent stellar drives in qualifying with even better race performances. And he did so more frequently than the other guy, in the same location. Albon was clearly the best driver in Williams' lineup until Sainz arrived. Nicholas Latifi and Logan Sargent never got near, but Franco Colapinto made a surprising and extended cameo to prove himself at F1 level last year. Colapinto, of course, performed admirably enough to nearly win himself a risky ride on the Red Bull driver excursion. Before his crashes in Interlagos and Vegas put Christian Horner and co. off for the start of 2025, Colapinto had done well enough to immediately eclipse Sargent. According to some, Albon had been found out by his new teammate. Colapinto made waves by outqualifying Albon in Austin and Baku, but Albon lost ground due to the weird fan situation. Overall, Colapinto outperformed Albon in terms of race pace only once, and this was due to the numerous events that muddled such comparisons. While Albon made several unexpectedly poor blunders in 2024, such as the Melbourne FP1 crash that resulted in Sargent's crushing standing down, the problematic FW46 did little to help its pilots. Indeed, when the drivers wrecked early on while trying hard to overcome the increased weight, the metal pieces that had been added because they were faster to build despite damaged chassis tubs contributed to the team's spare parts dilemma. However, Sainz is a clear stride ahead of Colapinto. He is currently Albon's best teammate since the London-born Thai driver last drove with Verstappen in 2020. The risk that he will overtake Albon is obvious, yet there is a relevant story in this evaluation that cannot be ignored right now. At this moment, Albon is as likely to emerge as the stronger of the two drivers in F1 2025. He's spent 3 years learning about Williams, including how every year it's constantly evolving, whereas Sainz is adjusting to his 5th new F1 team in a decade. However, there are also early hints that this season's plotline may benefit both parties, and this is just what Williams is hoping for. In terms of driving characteristics, both are incredibly smooth on turn-in, reminiscent of Jenson Button's Williams from a generation ago. They prefer a solid back end, with Albon taking a frequent stride to loosen steering lock past the apex to ensure decent grip at corner exit. Sainz tends to load up the front axle by turning in somewhat earlier than most of his competitors, and while Sainz's finest Ferrari wins came when he was able to fine-tune his small inclination for an understeering front end with a handling sweet spot, they will be working in the same car development direction, which will already help Williams significantly. Another sign that this combination is likely to remain cheery is that the 2025 campaign is about looking forward to what we have in 2026 together, according to Vowles. That is what Williams stands to gain from the forthcoming regulations reset, assuming it gets car development right. Vowles also feels, "What I love about Alex is he's a leader." He adds, "When things get difficult, he pulls forward, irrespective of what the circumstances are. And that lifts the team back up to emotional strength. He was the one encouraging us to get Carlos into the building because he's not worried about a challenge. He wants us to be successful. So, Alex is everything that I know he can be and wants to be." And Albon acknowledges Sainz's experience and knowledge from Ferrari will help a lot in the upcoming campaign. "He will be a good team leader as well," Albon continues. "He's well-spoken and he's very articulate. He comes from a strong engineering background too. I think he's good in that sense. So, how we take his information and how we can apply it to our car will be really important too." Finally, hard-to-shift narratives are swiftly learnt in F1. Just ask Sargent. And, for Albon, Sainz flattening him in 2025 would necessitate another round of reputation rehabilitation, even if this effort appears to be about little more than prize money stakes for Williams, not a minor point given the millions at stake. However, because of how brilliant Sainz is and what he has already demonstrated in a Class A squad, Albon now has the opportunity to leave an amazing mark of his own. If he can beat a 4-time GP winner, he might earn himself a more concrete path back to the big time than the now superseded option offer to perhaps rejoin Red Bull in 2026, which his outstanding early Williams form had already won. And if he can help Williams finally rebuild to win in 2026, all the better. Whatever occurs, expect it to be done with impeccable style. But who comes out on top remains to be seen. Albon has the knowledge of the squad and the years spent there, but Carlos seemed to have the upper hand during testing and has way more years of experience at the front. Could that be the deciding factor for 2025? Experience up front. After all, Williams is aiming to become 5th this season, so they must know something we don't. And if they've produced a faster car, they might have the best lineup off all the rest of the best teams on the grid. And not only that, as they now also have the money to back up their claims, as Williams has announced a new title agreement with software giant Atlassian, which will result in the squad being renamed for the 2025 season. And this will bring in the money required to start their journey back to the top. So, who will come out on top? And will they be able to perhaps challenge for 5th this season? And even better, in 2026? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.